Today, I'm going to share with you the story of how I discovered the principle of skill building and how it basically saved my life. One of the principles I talk about is to replace your passive consumption, your probably addictive media consumption, the constant chasing of a dopamine high through screens, to take some of that time or all of it that you spend on passive consumption and replace it with active creative work and with skill building. And really, in a way, those are both the same thing, because the only way to do active creative work is to develop your skill. It is always a skill building exercise. You're always on the path of improving when you're doing creative work. So really, what it comes down to is replace passive media consumption with skill building. This is one of my key recommendations for anyone who wants to overcome addiction. So if you're struggling with addiction, you're basically chasing that cheap dopamine that you get from your source of addiction. And one of the keys to changing that is you've got to replace it with healthy dopamine. You have to give yourself a different source of dopamine. And a healthy form of dopamine is the kind of dopamine, the reward you get from learning skills, from experiencing yourself improving. At the same time, this is also my key recommendation for the problem that a lot of young men, especially nowadays, are facing, where you feel kind of lost. You feel like your life isn't going anywhere. You're not sure what you're supposed to do. You feel maybe you're struggling with things like depression and anxiety, and you want to get out of that. You want to get out of this emotional, mental funk that you're in, but you're not sure how. And it turns out exactly this recommendation is also how to do it. And then on top of all that, it is also my key recommendation for going from boyhood to manhood, for leveling up, becoming a man, coming into your own. So really, it is a core philosophy of mine. I deeply believe, and experience has shown to me and proven to me over and over again, this is one of the most powerful things you can do in everything that exists in self-improvement. Take some or all of the time that you spend on passive, addictive media consumption and use it for skill building instead. Now, let me explain to you how I discovered this. And by telling you my story, you'll probably understand why I'm such a big believer in this, why this is one of the key recommendations and one of the key things I keep mentioning in my content, and also one of the things I work on with my clients that gets amazing results. So here's how I discovered the immense power of focusing your time and energy on skill building. And to understand this, we need to go back to my childhood to, maybe ages 7 to 12 or so. I was not having a good time, okay? The problem was that I seemed to be the worst at everything. It seemed like there was no one who sucked more than me, basically. Everything I tried to do, I was bad at. So I was getting bad grades in school. I also had trouble making friends. I wasn't one of the popular kids. In fact, I was the opposite. I was one of the kids that got made fun of and bullied. And I couldn't read social cues. I couldn't fit in. I basically didn't get it. My teachers were sometimes also confused. I seemed to be just not fully present. So I was kind of slow and dumb and didn't fit in, didn't have friends. I wasn't popular. Also, I wasn't athletic, right? I didn't have the redeeming quality of, hey, at least he's good at sports or something. No, I'd also be the kid who gets picked last to join the team. I was basically just struggling with everything. And of course, as you can imagine, I wasn't happy. I was sad. I was confused. I felt really lost. And it felt to me initially, and for many years, it felt to me like somehow I'm just doomed. Unfortunately, I'm bad at everything. And of course, people don't like me. Things are not going well for me. And it seemed like I'm just doomed to live a life of suffering and mediocrity. Now, at one point in my childhood, I joined a martial arts gym. I'd always been interested in martial arts. I'd been watching, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies, and I loved it. I loved fighting games. I just loved everything about martial arts and, stories of knights and samurai and so on. So I was very eager to join this martial arts gym. And I remember the first time I went there and I trained there, and it was the first time that I felt like, hey, maybe I don't suck at this. I wasn't like a prodigy or anything, but it seemed like I get something about this. And I got encouragement from my teacher, and that made me kind of go wild for it. I had this inkling that maybe this is something I'm good at. And so I started training basically every free moment I had. And then as it turned out, because I was training so much, because I was so motivated, because I spent so much time and energy thinking about it and practicing, and I'd practice at home between training sessions and stuff, I did get pretty good at it. And it was a really important experience for me because first of all, finally, there was something about me that I could feel good about, right? There's finally the one thing I don't suck at. So it was very valuable for my self-esteem. But also, I started to realize that there's a clear correlation here between like where I'm putting my time and energy and effort and where I'm getting results. It was the first time that I very clearly saw, look, I'm getting better, and the more I train, the more I put my focus on building this skill, the faster I get better and the more rewarding it is. And guess what? That's an example of healthy dopamine. I was creating a virtuous cycle of investing my time and energy into building this skill and then getting positive feedback from my teachers, and also, experiencing myself getting better and ranking up through the system. And that was very rewarding, which made me want to do more, which made me level up faster, and so on. So the first skill I learned was, in a way, martial arts, but in a more important way, the first skill I learned was the skill of learning. I started to see the very clear connection between my input of effort and my output of results. And also I got interested in, well, how can I learn faster? How can I memorize these forms faster? How can I train these reflexes and get better at this faster? I learned about learning. Now, I ended up never making a career out of anything martial arts related. So you might think it wasn't that useful of a life skill, but it turns out it was an extremely useful life skill. Because not only was it, good to train and learn and move my body and all that, but also I started helping out with classes. I became an assistant trainer in that school. I started helping out, and eventually I even got my own classes. I had 2 classes a week where I taught kids a style of martial arts called wushu, which in the school I was training in, we kind of adapted this style as an introductory style for kids to get them to learn how to move their bodies and stuff. And it's kind of a fun thing to do as well. And I was basically the main teacher in my school for this style for these kids. And so the second skill it taught me is the skill of teaching. And that has been one of the most important skills in my life. And it is something I have made a career out of. Now, if we fast forward a little bit in my story, eventually I found myself in a place where I was done with school and I was still training a lot. I was still teaching a lot. And I'd also started doing all kinds of other things. I was also an assistant teacher in an indoor climbing gym, for example. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff and I had gotten quite active, but I noticed one thing. I was doing a lot of work for free. And I was done with school. I didn't really want to go study yet. I was trying to find jobs, but the economic situation wasn't great. So all I could get were really crappy temp jobs. So I was doing lots of really grueling manual labor for very little pay. And I was doing lots and lots of work, like in my evenings and free time, I was doing lots of work just for free. And at some point I was like, I don't like this, right? I'm working so much and I'm so broke. I would like to solve this problem. And here, all of the experience I had up to this point was so important because it made me look at my situation and go, okay, I do not have the skill of making money, clearly. I have the skill of working hard. I'm a good teacher. I have all kinds of things going for myself. Like at this point, I'd spent years and years building all these different skills, but clearly I don't have money. So I must be bad at the skill of making money. And I remember this distinctly. I thought about my life situation and I thought, okay, look at some of the things I've gotten really good at. As some things I got good at in a relatively short amount of time. I just put loads and loads of effort into it. What if I got this good at making money? Wouldn't that be worth spending a lot of time and attention on? Simply choosing to see this as a skill, choosing to see this as something I can get better at was one of the most important things I ever did. Because at that point, I set out to get good at making money. And I did it the same way I'd done all of my other skill building up to that point, which is I spent a lot of time and energy on this. And also I read books to figure out, my knowledge gaps. I was like, okay, actually, I don't know anything about money. Really, the only thing I knew about money is you try to get a job and then you get paid. And that didn't seem to be working very well for me. So I was like, okay, what else can people do? And I started learning about entrepreneurship. I started learning about marketing. I started learning about investing. I decided that for me, the best chance I had of really changing my financial situation was to become an entrepreneur, to start my own business. And again, I just thought, look, this is a set of skills that I don't have. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know how to do marketing. I don't know how to create a product. I don't know how to do any of the stuff that you need to do to have a successful business. But I just assumed these are learnable skills. And what I need to do is invest time and energy into it. I need to learn from the right sources and I need to keep going long enough, invest myself enough in this until I get good. And that's exactly what I did. And I started a whole bunch of little businesses that were a complete disaster, but I kind of failed fast and failed often. I started a couple of little internet businesses. I started building websites, started learning about online marketing. started doing all kinds of stuff, and I kind of just stumbled my way towards a skill set where eventually I got pretty good at content marketing, and I had a blog that had a growing readership. And then I learned how to make my own products, and I learned how to sell those products, and so on and so forth. I eventually got into software businesses and software as a service, and I learned how to form partnerships, and I did all the entrepreneur stuff basically, right? And this is, okay, I'm giving you a really quick summary here of a thing that took like 15 years, because as it turns out, entrepreneurship is pretty much a bottomless rabbit hole of things to learn. And there is a lot to learn. And it's very difficult. It's one of the hardest things I ever got good at, but I did get pretty good at it. And of course, the payoff of being good at making money with entrepreneurship is massive compared to the payoff you get from investing that time into just being an employee. It also comes with a lot more risk. Like, this is not my pitch for you should become an entrepreneur. Most people fail at this. It's incredibly hard to do. You're taking on a lot of risk, etc., etc. But I think it's fundamentally true that it is a matter of skill. And with enough time and energy dedicated to learning that skill, you can get good at it. And having said that, let me also say the same is true for a career, right? You can kind of just blindly go with the flow into a career and probably not much is going to happen. But if you look at a career and career progression as a set of skills, and if you ask yourself, what do I need to get really good at to get to the career progression that I want, then it's the same idea, right? Don't just like sit and wait and hope. Be very deliberate about how you spend your time and energy to learn the right skills that will get you the promotions and the positions that you want in your career. I eventually sold my main big software company and kind of quote unquote retired. And then one of the things I did after that is I started Quit My Healing. And it's the same idea. Look, I was starting to do men's work, and I saw lots of men, especially young men, struggling with addictive behavior. And I thought, okay, how can I help these guys? And I simply look at it as a matter of skill. I started by just sharing my own experience of how I had overcome my own addictive behavior. But I also started doing lots and lots of research, and I started working with guys, and I started experimenting. I basically started dedicating my time and energy and attention to this skill, the skill of helping someone like you level up in the most effective and most significant way possible. And again, I believe there's no magic to this. It's simply a matter of learning the right things and building that skill. And the more I do it, the better I get at it. This is why the idea of skill building is such a core principle that I teach and that I apply in my own life. It is the one thing that has transformed my life the most. It is the thing that got me from feeling like I'm just doomed to be a failure in every aspect of life for the rest of my life, to building the life and the business and the lifestyle that I want. In fact, building a much better life and lifestyle than I could ever have dreamed of before I discovered this idea. And let me add one important detail in this story. When I started on my entrepreneurial journey, at first, it was not going well. I was really struggling, and I noticed a problem. At the time, I was playing video games. I had a gaming console and I had a PC that was a gaming PC and loads of games on it. And I spent quite a lot of time every day playing video games, which was fun. But I realized that I was wasting hours a day on a thing that was not moving me towards my goal. And I realized that if I wanted to become an entrepreneur, if I wanted to get good at this complex skill set of entrepreneurship, I couldn't be wasting hours a day. It just wouldn't make enough progress. And so I decided to sell my gaming console and all of my games and basically stop playing games from one day to the next. And this was me replacing cheap dopamine that I was still craving at the time by basically getting rid of that and saying, I'm going to spend this time instead on the skill that's going to take my life in the direction I want to go. And that worked. After I did that, I started making real progress. Right now, we live in a world where I think basically everyone is in the situation I was in back then. Now, for some of you, it's also gaming. For many of you, it is just various forms of doom scrolling. We all have this addiction machine in our pocket that we call a smartphone, and it is full of apps that are designed to get and keep our attention for as much as possible. And most of us spend hours and hours and hours every day scrolling through various feeds. And yes, this is an addiction. I mean, look, people argue about the semantics of this. Oh, is it really an addiction? It's not in the DSM-5 or whatever. It doesn't matter. This is addictive behavior. It is compulsive behavior. You are continually doing something, even if it makes you feel bad, even if you doom scroll all day and then you feel like you're in a total funk. And guess what? You keep doing it the next day. That's the definition of addiction. You're spending your precious limited lifetime on something that does not move you towards the things that actually matter to you and towards your life goals. Again, that is the definition of addiction. You keep doing a thing even though it's not good for you, and even though you probably constantly have part of you that goes, oh, I should do less of this and I want to quit, and you try to quit and you can't because you relapse and so on, right? Again, I basically find it funny when people argue the semantics of this, or because it's not in the DSM, it's not officially an addiction. Yeah, but it's textbook addictive behavior. And the truth is, we're all addicted. Most of us are addicted to like 5 different things. Or most of us are addicted to our phones, to different apps on our phones, maybe to video games, maybe to some pills, maybe to coffee, right? You can't wake up in the morning without your coffee. You can't go to sleep at night without your melatonin. Maybe, to vaping, to weed, to all kinds of stuff. Everybody's such an addict these days. And addiction is stealing a lot of your time and attention. And this is why it is such a power move to basically take some or all of that time and attention that you're currently spending on consumption of addictive stuff and directing it towards skills that you want to build. So that's my story, and hopefully that motivates you to do the same thing for you. I honestly think that for lots of people, this is one of the most powerful things you can do to change your life. Now, if you're wondering, okay, that sounds good, but what skills should I build? I have a whole separate podcast episode on that, which I'll link to in the show notes and in the YouTube video description here, which you can watch, where we go through and break down a whole set of skills, like very specific examples, and why you should or shouldn't focus on whichever skills we're talking about. We go into lots of detail, plus we have a blog post with loads and loads of examples. So if you feel like, okay, this sounds like a good idea, but I literally don't know what skills to build, check that out. That is a super valuable resource for you. Also, if you want to learn more about how to level up your life and how to replace your addictive behavior with healthy habits that take your life in the direction that you want to go, make sure you subscribe to this channel and make sure that you join the Quit by Healing community. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to interact with this for the algorithm, right? Leave a like, leave a comment so that the algorithm shows it to more people. That makes a huge difference. And if you have any questions about this, please leave a comment. I try to answer all questions. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.